G'day, folks. Today I thought I'd discuss whether West Coast should trade Harley Reid. So, as those who have followed me on Twitter, if you haven't already followed, make sure you get behind me at AFL Draft Expert. I've been pretty vocal, to say the least, in saying that West Coast should retain pick one and take Harley Reid. My personal belief is that with Harley Reid being a country boy and being pretty vocal as well, publicly saying that he'd be willing to stay, I think all things considered, really, West Coast should take the pick and should take Harley Reid. I think that's a pretty sensible approach with all that understood. So, but really what I want to delve into today is basically having a think about, well, what extent would it take for me if I was in charge of West Coast to actually accept a deal? So that's the big question. Because let's say in a hypothetical world, and this is just talking silly deals for a moment, you could have North Melbourne offering picks 2, 3, and their 2024 first. And you'd even have Adrian Dodoro at home pretty casually saying, yeah, I'd agree to that deal. I think there's something to it. So there's always conditions where a deal can be made. It's just always coming to the right price. So that's what I'm endeavoring to do today. So a question I was asked earlier in the year is whether picks 2 and 3 would suffice for pick 1. So that was even at that time, which is saying something. And at that time I wasn't too sure, just because of the extent to which Reid was absolutely separating himself from the field. What I will say now is that, and maybe it's because I haven't been watching any junior footy at all this year, but I have had a slight change of opinion there. So if in the hypothetical world picks 2 and 3 were offered by North Melbourne for pick 1, I would take it. And yes, North Melbourne fans, I'm fully aware that no, that offer is not on the table. So moving on from that, but firstly, putting a level on where you would definitely, in West Coast's situation, take the offer. So if picks 2 and 3 are on the table, yep, that's a deal. But these are the offers that I would be saying to North Melbourne that, look, if you came to the table with this level of currency, I would be willing to do the trade. So the level I have settled on is, if offered picks 2 and 3 by North Melbourne, I would be willing to offer pick 1 and the choice of either. It is currently pick 23, which is West Coast's second round pick, and that'll no doubt move back a number of selections anyway with all the academy and father-son picks. But the other option would be West Coast 2024 second rounder. So so it'd be pick 1 and the 2024 second rounder. Presumably that's more valuable. And then that would be with the expectation of return of picks 2 and 3. So that would be the type of trade I would be willing to accept in North Melbourne's situation. But in that situation, I would look to leverage that situation to further improve my draft position. So when I'm saying that, where I'm going with that is, if you look at the points value index, well, we know that picks 2 and 3 in combination add up to a lot more points than just pick 1 on its own. So I'm looking at things from that sort of angle. So what I'd really be looking at in West Coast situation is, well, either pick 2 or 3. Is there a move down that I could look at that would allow me to essentially receive or draft one of the players that I would be picking at either picks 2 or 3 anyway? And then also maybe I can at the same time receive a future asset as well to really maximize the haul received. That would be really the strategic approach that I would have with things. So one example I was thinking of, so I could move down either pick 2 or 3 to, let's say, Melbourne. Melbourne have a combination of picks. They might like to move up. So let's say they've got a player in mind. So let's say young Dersma. So Dersma might be one that they have on their radar as just a hypothetical player who I'm sure is still rated one of the top players in the country in this year's draft. So it could be a move down of whether it's pick 2 or 3. Let's say it's whichever pick for your choosing. But Melbourne could offer picks 6, 11, and if I was able to secure their 2024 first at the same time, well, that's phenomenal. That means I'm still left with either pick 2 or 3. Let's say I've given up pick 2, so I've still got pick 3, and then I've also got picks 6, 11, and then an additional 2024 first. So that's a way where I've really maximized my position, and really it allows me to potentially get a number of really good picks in this year's draft, but then also potentially someone good next year. And with the future value of a pick always unknown, because we have to see where a team finishes, well, what if Melbourne happen to fall a number of spots down the ladder? We never know. Maybe there's some chemistry issues internally. Maybe something happens with Clayton Oliver and things go off the wall there, or who knows what's going to happen in Melbourne's situation. Maybe they just get a bit old as a list, so you never say never. So it's the essence of that type of deal. Not saying the currency is necessarily right. I haven't even put a great deal of thought into that. And you can let me know at home if there's any Melbourne fans watching, if you would be that keen to get to pick 2 or 3. Let's call it pick 2 for argument's sake. And would you be willing to offer picks 6, 11, and also your 2024 first? And look, maybe if it's pick 3, maybe a West Coast could concede, okay, maybe your 2024 second might be sufficient if they're still holding it. I'd need to check if they're still holding that pick. But that's the essence of the strategy I would take, where it's really about maximizing that draft position and that ultimate draft return. And in the other scenario that, let's say you can't get whoever would be you'd have in mind for picks 2 and 3. So maybe whoever would be the player that you have in mind might not be available at that next pick you'd be looking to trade down to. Well, the other option I'd have in mind there is, let's say I've got a tier of players. So maybe it picks 2, 3, and then I might see that as an even group till, let's say, hypothetically pick 7 or 8. So I'd be willing, if there's players within that range, to move down to any of those picks, and then again take the same approach of, well, how can I maximize the return that I'm getting? So maybe again it's a future pick, so it could be a future first, future second, something along those sorts of lines. Or maybe it's moving up this year with one of the later picks. So that's the general approach. Or even better, well, what if there's a player that, again, I have in that tier of, let's say, 2 to 8, let's say, again, going under that hypothetical. Well, what if my 7th or 8th rated player is someone I think might be available in the teens? Well, then that gives me a great deal of greater flexibility, where maybe I can move back, say, 10 spots as an example, even accounting for all the bidding that's going to happen, and still get my preferred player with one of those picks trading down, and then maybe it means I can get a future first as well. So yeah, hopefully that gives a general strategic outlook. But yeah, if I was in West Coast position and I was looking to go for picks 2 and 3, it wouldn't really be so specifically a trade with the aim to just get 2 and 3. I'd really be even looking those steps ahead of that to look at, well, okay, who are the other clubs that I could deal with if I had one of those picks, to move down a bit further to further increase my asset base of picks. Because I think ultimately that's how you receive the best return. If you really look back through the picks over the years, you really want that quantity of first round picks if you're in that sort of rebuilding situation, because ultimately clubs will substantially overpay if you look at how much they've given up to actually move up the draft in a given year. Thanks for watching, folks, and yeah, let me know in the comments section below if you're a West Coast fan and if you agree with my take. I'd be curious to hear. But yeah, if you're after any more draft videos, let me know if you've got any more requests in the lead up to the draft, or perhaps even post-draft, maybe some sort of review. I'd be, yeah, interested to hear some thoughts. But anyway, folks, see you in the next video.